Thank you for joining me again in Execututor's 5-question series answering some of the most overwhelming questions about preparing for higher education. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Weiner. Now we'll move on to the application itself, the personal statement and short essay questions. I want you to make this an experience of self-exploration and introspection, looking back on your life and joyfully planning a possible future. While it'll take a lot of work to write good essays, it will be, by and large, a pleasurable rather than painful experience. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Weiner of Execututor, and now we are going to be going over tips for writing the short college essays and the longer personal statement. So for the short essay questions, I would begin by really stressing that you do your research. You're going to be asked questions specifically about why you were a good match for the school. That tends to be a repetitive question. So it will ask you why you're applying to a specific school within the university, or just the more general question about why you're a good match for the school. In that case, it really is important that you research the university. Don't just say something generic that you can apply for every school that you are looking at. It should be something that is specific about the school. So that will involve doing your homework and research. You're going to have to look at each department that you're interested in and look at courses under different majors. That's going to involve, bit of homework into looking into what the courses that are being offered in the fall and spring, what past courses were. So not just looking at a description of the major or the career paths that they suggest, but what are the actual courses that they've offered? You're going to look at their faculty list and look at all the different specializations that people have and the books that they've written. You're going to look at their extracurricular opportunities. So that's going to mean looking at all the possible internships. A lot of universities will have organizations that they're part of. For example, let's say you're interested in medical school, to give you an example, Rice University in Houston, they're part of one of the most important medical complexes for cancer research in the world. That's something you're going to want to be interested in looking at because the chances are they're going to have internships. They're going to have volunteer possibilities. You might be able to take courses there as well, but get involved in some way. So the fact that you are an applicant to, say, Rice University and you know about this medical center and some of the things that they specialize in, that's something that you can put into your application to show why you're a good match. You actually know the school and can envision yourself there. And you're going to show what your possible experience might be, kind of demonstrate it, illustrate it for them so that they get a sense of that. You're going to be asked questions about extracurricular topics. And so if you're 18 years old or 17 years old when you're applying, chances are you've done a lot of things in the last 10 years of your life. Do you want to list everything? No. You, again, want to edit these things down and go into depth rather than spreading yourself thin. Go into depth into things that you think are really going to help bolster your application. It may be that you need to emphasize the human side of your personality, or the fact that you are somebody that has gotten involved in the community that might not show through in other parts of your application. So the extracurricular question is a good place to emphasize that you have been involved in the community. Or if you're somebody who's strong in the sciences, that might be a place where you talk about your involvement in the arts. Or if you're somebody, say, that is very sports oriented, that again you might want to there have a place to put your involvement, say, in the choir. But it's a way of rounding yourself out and showing something different about yourself. In terms of the more overwhelming task, which is the personal statement, there's some things as well that I would suggest, and the most simple one is starting well in advance. This is not the type of thing that you want to leave for the last minute. And by the last minute, I really even mean the last 3 or 4 months. That would seem to be a long time for a 1,000-word essay or less. But in fact, you really need more time. So say start well in advance, because you're going to go through at least 5 drafts. And it's really important. I've had students go through 7 or 10 drafts. And that's a essential part of the process, because it will allow you to really experiment throughout the writing of it. So that's another thing. Don't be afraid to write about things that were challenging for you, and which made you struggle, and for which you don't have a complete answer yet. There may be some experience in the past that really sort of stretched who you were, and which you tried to meet to the best of your ability, and you may not have had a perfect outcome. That's actually a perfect or a very good essay topic, because it shows how, with the resources and ideas that you had at the time, how well you were able to adapt to it and struggle, and that you're not the type of person who thinks that they have the correct answer, knows it all at 18 years old. I think, there's probably nothing more inauthentic as an 18-year-old who really has all of the answers.
Is that really inauthentic? Because I'm sure every 18-year-old thinks they have all the answers.
Yeah, that's true. They probably do. But it does often come across as preachy, or moralizing when the person seems to know all of these answers. And then what I would also finally add is, don't try to write to fit an image of yourself that you're trying to convey. So this goes into authenticity again. If you think you're, applying to the Wharton School of Business, and you have this kind of 1980s image of like a successful business person, or kind of a mogul image as well, and all of your references are to Steve Jobs and all of these kind of CEOs. It's like you're trying to fit an image of yourself. You're trying to fit yourself into an idea of what you think that school wants. So I think it's really important to remember that you're not just trying to sell yourself to the school, but you're really trying to find the right place for yourself. And that's going to start with being very honest in that essay. To go back to a case that I mentioned before about the girl who thought she wanted to study fashion design, is actually in the essay writing itself that she discovered that she really had no real interest in fashion, because she was able to go review her experience and think about tangible, concrete, moments in her past, and that led her to realize that it was actually illustration that was something that mattered to her. So I think that you should use the essay for yourself as well, not just to impress, but to get a better sense of who you are by doing this multiple draft process that really makes it more possible. Why? Because if you, in that first draft, you don't think, well, this is what they're going to be reading, or you're stressed out that this is where you're going to have to show up, but this can be a place where you kind of play with it. So what I often tell people to do is to write about a particular incident or experience from the past as if they were a reporter, not trying to moralize or trying to draw some grand idea from it, but just literally going back to an experience, going through it chronologically as if they were a reporter on the incident, trying to take using the senses as much as possible. What did they see? What did they hear? What did they smell? What did they feel? And just going through that, that's many drafts away from your final one, and probably you only have a few sentences that you will use from it, but it allows you at least to really be in the moment and to be authentic and to find things in your experience that give you a clue as to who you are, rather than starting with some grand idea initially and then trying to take experiences to fill it up, and talking about your experience in a general way.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I don't want to say a false ideology of what you think, like you said, a business mogul looks like. You do have to remember too, when you're applying to these schools, you're applying to these schools to learn more. they don't expect you to go in. I mean, they expect you to have a certain level of education, of course, but you're there to learn. So I don't want to say, because the personal statement also is a place, I don't want to say a place to be humble, because you still want to talk about your strengths, right? But yeah, just remember there's still a lot to learn.
You are going to be not presenting a picture of a finished product. Let's say you are not a finished product at this point. You haven't figured out all the answers, but what you're trying to give is a snapshot about your ability to really rise to certain challenges and do the best you can to meet them. And this could be academic achievements, but it can also be kind of moral or challenges that you've reached, that you've come to in the past, that show who you are as a person. And so when you oftentimes when people get to, especially when they're looking at real kind of big moral dilemmas, like I had a student who was applying to schools who wrote about her experience with her church group on the whole issue of same-sex marriage, and having to serve as a liaison between people who were vehemently against each other. And she wanted to emphasize the fact that she had been this kind of reasonable, diplomatic person, which is great. But you also have to beware of then trying to create this image of yourself as a nice person that you're trying to market, which can come off as false, right?
Say pretentious or condescending.
Exactly. So, in that process, it's like the best way to do that, again, is to go back to these real tangible things. I mean, to really imagine what it was like in those situations. What did I see? What did I hear? What did I smell? Et cetera. So that it takes you out of that image conscious, judgmental side of yourself, and more into a deeper part of you. And you can really discover not just how well you did, but maybe how badly you did, because that kind of admission of how challenging something was, and how you may have failed, but how you tried nevertheless to stand to the occasion, is really what a lot of schools are looking for. It's to see what your character is, and your resourcefulness, and your ability to deal with situations that may be hard, or for which there is not a perfect answer.
Very useful information from Dr. Weiner here. Dr. Weiner, where can our listeners find all of this information?
You can go to our website, execututor.com. That's execututor.com. And we have a lot of resources, articles, and answers to common questions. But really, if you would like to get more specific answers, or if you have anything that came up, you can fill out the contact form on the website, and I will get back to you. Or feel free to schedule an initial consultation, which is free of charge. Thank you for listening to part 4 of this 5-part series on college preparation and applications. In our final broadcast that's coming up, we're going to imagine you are in your second semester already of your freshman year. And how do you know if you are in the right place? If things are not going well for you, does it mean you are at the wrong school, or just going through a normal process of adjustment?